everybody, you're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. This is the weekly radio show where we chat about the local arts news. We have a different guest on each week. We head over to the Light Zone for a short story and or some poetry. We catch up with Twangling Jack Ford over in the Oak Shed for a weekly album review, and we play local, unsigned and or independent music. As always, you can reach out to me here at the studio on dane.cobain at wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain at wickhamsound.org.uk. I'm particularly keen to hear from poets, performers, musicians, people with MP3s to share, local arts, news, etc. Don't hesitate to get in touch. You can also find us on Facebook. If you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. And we are repeating on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. So this week we're going to be chatting to local musician. She's a drummer and a stunt person, Sophie Reed. But before we do that, we're going to head over to the Light Zone and we have some poems from Mervyn Cook.
Homecomings Part 1. The waterfall cascades over the cliff from its source in the mountains, from whence it came. The house below, dull life, is her youth, her innocence. The memories of my childhood came flooding back. Shane Mullock. I returned to the roads and routes I used to roam as a youngster. I traced the old railway track that sure still lies under young Shellgrove Place. You imposter, you lay your ear to the ground and hear the hum of a long-gone steam train coming through the mists of time. My father and I got off just before the Nestles factory. We scrunched the stones at the side of the track, scrambled down the slope to the road by the bridge where the Houstons lived. The old churchyard, over the bridge brighter by the morning thrush song, sung over the tidy death of graves, tended by love and sons. I stood in the silence of a dark snug bar, features of an old friend flame flickered by the embers of a half-lit fire. Dog-eyed tears, dripping ears, so keen to see mine. We grasped a memory from the shelf of time, dusted it down, polished with pride. Come in, Mervyn, sit down a while. Butler's Bridge. They closed the line and shut the station, built a better road too, straight and true, and left the bridge a gaping maw, staring across former fields, yellow riot of prickly gorse, ivy-strained sadness of Ulster stone. Above, below, vacant cat's eyes dimmed and dead. No more the neat grey's grip eyes peering above, the toe-scuffed hold on the edge of the world. Dad, the train's coming. No more the swooshing, gushing bullet of life, steam stuffed with children's seaside dreams. No more the lover's lane secrete, screened seam nights of brambled, tangled passion. No more the hum of the rider's rim, no more the clip-pop of pony and trap, no more stick-step of the spinster spurned. No more moss tears fell from her face. Stone, cold, silent. The last goodbye. When you can no more turn around and take one last look, when you can no more stare and say a final I love you, when you can no more bend low and kiss the forehead 3 times, in one last parting physical act, one last touch, father on son, flesh on flesh, tears in eyes. And for some reason I'd brought with me my son's GCSE poetry book. Had someone said that my father in his final years had read a lot? The Bible, and yes, someone said he loved poetry. In the not-for-private ward, 5 or 6 other beds were occupied with elderly patients in various phases of their impending death. Some silent, some stared, one babbled incoherently to an imaginary friend. And so I read my father poetry on his deathbed. Keats, Tennyson, William Butler Yeats, Kipling, all the classics he loved. He was semi-conscious, hooked up to saline drip and breathing with artificial help. I read and I cried. I couldn't get the words out. I choked. I stumbled. I stopped. I started again. My father's lips moved and I leant across the bed to hear his final word. Gunga. And then I came across a piece of poetry I'd never read before as it stared up at me from the pages of the poetry book, Christina Rossetti's Remember Me. Remember me when I am gone away, gone far away from the silent land, when you can no more hold me by the hand, nor I half turn to go, yet turning stay. Better by far that you should forget and smile, than that you should remember and be sad. I thought, how could someone write something so beautiful? I turned to go, not wanting to stay, not wanting to go and watch the group of bees busy about their nectar tea on that warm September eve. They moved from blossom to blossom, sipping at the nectar, save one who sought a different path. And words came, not at once, not flowing, not constant, not when, but stuttering and stumbling and staggering through this fog of grief. Stop. Start. Right. Wrong. I walked out of the hospital, sister by my side, both silent. The raucous caw-caw of quarrelsome crows creating roosts and nesting for the night. The orange dead sun had draped the trees in a funereal curtain, as the silhouetted flanks of fiery trunks stood still in respect for the passing of one so old, my father. I wish I could see him one more time, hold his hand again, feel his stubbled chin against my cheek. But you know, he's never far away. He is here in the walls of my mind. He is here in the words I write. He is here in the laughter of my sons. He is here in the poems I recite, in the dawn of my thoughts, in the sunset of my dreams. He is here in the hearts and in the minds of the people who hear and read these words. Once more I'm with them in the hazy light of those sun-filled evenings in the hayfield. I walked with him in the woods, I hold his hand, at rest and at peace.
Big thank you to Mervyn Cook for this week's entry into the Rhylight Zone. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and this is Thomas Heppel with Be My Home.
Home time, it's a funny thing, can heal the deepest wounds, create the most painful things. And since, girl, you came along, you're the greatest gift to fall in my arms. And I don't deserve the heart you give. Now the beauty of your soul, I'm just so in love with. And I hope you can see beyond my troubled times, 'cause I'm a man who's broken, being fixed one piece at a time. Oh, so be with me While my world falls apart, you're the only thing I need. When the light has returned, be there by my side, and please, oh, be my home. In my mind, it's a complex thing. Can make the most beautiful world a very tragic place. You know, I wish I could change, chase away my demons, remove the pain. And I don't deserve the heart you give. Now the beauty of your soul, I'm just so in love with. And I hope you can see beyond my troubled times, 'cause I'm a man who's broken, being fixed one piece at a time. Oh, so be with me while my world falls apart. You're the only thing I need. When the light has returned, be there by my side. Please, oh, be my home. So be with me while my world falls apart. You're the only thing I need. And when the light has returned, be there by my side and be my home.
Apple Productions. Become one, become one, become one, become one. To become one, and that's me, and that's you. Become one. Through all the changes, we grew as one. Become one, become one, become one. let you become one. As one, me and you.
That was Ms. Monagle and I by Hogarth's Wolf. Before that, we had Thomas Heppel with Be My Home. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and we're joined in conversation now by this week's guest, who is musician and stunt person, Sophie Reed. The first question is a traditional one, which is, what was the last book that you read, and what did you think of it?
So, I'm not really a book reader. So I'm still reading Miriam Margolyes's kind of autobiography. And whilst it's not as funny as she is, say, on the Graham Norton show, it's quite an insight into her life, because I didn't realise how much voiceover work and other stuff that she did outside of film and, I guess, TV.
Cool.
So it's quite interesting, because I'm actually going to see her at the end of this month at, on her one-woman show, so I'm quite excited.
Brilliant. Yeah. Well, and you're kind of involved in that industry yourself as well, and we'll chat a little bit about that later on. Funnily enough, I picked that up from a charity shop about two or three days ago, and some random guy, as I was buying it, he said he just finished reading it. He listened to the audiobook and he recommended checking that out as well, because she narrates it. So I'm tempted. I might actually listen to the audiobook just to get it in kind of her voice as well.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Because I've read Dave Grohl's autobiography, and I've heard, because he narrates his own one as well. So I'm like, oh, maybe I should do that as well, to read it and hear him say it as it should be said.
Yeah.
Be interesting.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Well, mentioning Dave Grohl, obviously, you yourself, you're a drummer. I wondered, how long have you been playing drums, and how did you get your start?
What year is it? 2023. So it must be coming up to 22 years, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, 21. I think it's 21. 21 this month. And I actually I went to an all-girls school, so there wasn't really drums or bands or anything like that at that point. But I was part of, it was like our form assembly or something, and my friend was on xylophone, and then the music teacher came up to her and was like, do you want to play drums? We're having we're going to start drum lessons. And I overheard, and I was like, I really want to do it. And it kind of just kicked off from that. That was what I was age 13, so it's going back quite a few years. You can probably work out my age from that as well. But yeah, that's how it started, really. So it just kind of kicked off from that.
Cool. Awesome. And what was it that made you want to, play drums as opposed to, say, guitar or, in this case, xylophone?
Let's face it, drums is a lot cooler than anything else. It's very physical, active. But I don't know, the drummer for me, whenever I've seen them on, obviously, back in the day, like Top of Pops and things like that, or when I saw, the VMAs or whatever it was, the drummer always just looked the coolest to me, and they're giving it all this energy. They look like they were having fun the whole time. So I don't know, something just clicked in my brain, and I was like, let's play drums.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I can't remember where I was the other day, but I could hear music, when you can hear music from like a long way away, and all I could hear was the drums. You could just hear that, like the bass drum or whatever. And it's kind of the same at festivals. You hear the drums before you hear the rest of the music. But I was thinking about this the other day as well. Like, I suppose drumming is probably, is it the oldest form of music? It must be one of the oldest, because it is just hitting something off something else. And, I think it kind of connects to that, that primal musical nature that we have as human beings, I suppose, I
think so. Yeah, definitely. I reckon, cave people were banging on stuff way before we did tuned instruments or anything like that. Along with voice, obviously. So I'm sure there's a lot of screaming and shouting and chanting or whatever at the same time.
Cool. So you mentioned Dave Grohl earlier. Obviously, he's an iconic drummer. But I wondered, who are some of your favorite drummers, and how have they influenced your own playing?
So Dave Grohl is one. I think he is probably for many drummers. His counterpart, R.I.P. Taylor Hawkins. He was probably the biggest influence to me because at that point I was just getting into like rock music and stuff when I first started playing. And Foo Fighters were one of the main bands that I was listening to at that point, and I've just kind of followed them ever since, really. But to be honest, there's a bit of a loop as well because going back to like the VMAs and all that, I remember watching drummers, when I was 6 or 7 or whatever, and there was 2 points. It was either the Michael Jackson VMAs where Jarvis Cocker jumped on stage. I just remember that drummer. I remember that. It's either that I saw first, or it was Alanis Morissette, and obviously Taylor Hawkins used to play for Alanis back in the day, Jagged Little Pill tour. It was either one of those two that kicked in my brain, like, let's play drums. I've got a feeling it was the Taylor Hawkins one, and obviously we come full circle. There's also drummers like, Sheila E., obviously famous for Prince, and a few others, Santana. She's obviously got more of a Latin-y kind of background, I guess. She did percussion first. And then you've got people like Ray Luzia, who currently plays for Korn, but if you actually look at his back catalogue, he is incredible. He's ambidextrous, he plays open-handed, so drummers will understand, some musicians will understand what that means. But he's actually right-handed. But that just, for me, just watching that, I only discovered him in the last sort of 10 years, but watching that and seeing how he plays really opened up how I approach the drum kit and how I play, because it opens up a bigger world to drumming. Same goes for RJ Hale. So he's the drummer for the band Hailstorm, which are one of my loves. In fact, they're probably one of my favorite bands ever now. Just incredible. And I've seen them quite a few times live. And again, with him, he plays open-handed quite a lot, but he's very energetic and, he's throws in a few stick tricks. So during COVID, I actually practiced quite a lot, almost every day actually, just getting used to the open hand technique, and then start doing, trick flicks and all that sort of stuff as well. It's more engaging. It's fun to watch. I see a lot of drummers that are incredible, but they're so boring to watch. So I wanted to up my game and sort of become those sorts of drummers where you're like, oh, the drummer. When people in the audience are like, oh, did you see the drummer? So I think drummers, a lot of us, we want to be out front, but we can't sing. So we're at the back, but we want to do all these, flippy tricks and all that sort of stuff. So I think that's a handful for you. Obviously, I can list off a loads of other people, but we'll be here forever.
Well, and I think guitarists are the classic example. Guitarists have their tricks as well, and it's the same as it is with a drummer. Somebody can be technically a very good guitarist, but you want to see them do the windmill thing or whatever. You need to see them prancing around stage, otherwise it is still boring, no matter how good they are. But also it's funny because you mentioned a lot of drummers that end up, they'd like to be at the front of the stage, but they can't sing. Well, obviously Taylor Hawkins could sing, but also when drummers sing, to me, like either when they sing lead or my friend's band, the Phenomenauts, their drummers sing sometimes, or even when they're singing like harmonies. To me, that's one of the most impressive things, because to me anyway, it seems the hardest thing to do, like as opposed to playing guitar and singing a harmony. When you're playing drums, I don't know, I think playing, keeping the beat and singing a harmony, they're kind of two quite different things to me. So I'm always quite impressed when I do see a drummer, behind the microphone while playing as well.
It's I mean, obviously I do quite a lot of backing vocals, as you know. Do try and sing, but we'll probably leave that for another day. It can be, but it depends how you approach stuff, to be honest. And I think it's the same, when you do look at singers, especially guitarists and singers, like, I don't know, what's that lead singer from Trivium? He plays like crazy.
Oh, Matt Heafy,
over the top. Like, to me, that's incredible. Drumming, I can see what you mean, but when you start playing really intricate drumming patterns, especially like ongoing fills and things like that, that's hard to sing over. And that's something that I rarely practice, if I'm honest, because I'd rather perfect the fills and things like that. But it is, to be honest, I think if you're just doing multiple things, it's incredible anyway, because it takes you've got to split your brain into like multiple compartments in order to do that. It's funny as well, because you mentioning, like growing up and looking at the drummers and being really kind of inspired by them. When I was a kid, my dad's band used to play, they used to play like pub gigs, but they used to do like 50s and 60s rock and roll. And one of the songs they used to do was Wipeout by the Safaris. And I was obsessed with the drummer. He was a guy called Nigel, just because of the drum solo in Wipeout. And I always wanted to be him.
but I wasn't very good at drums, so I learned guitar instead.
Yeah, Wipeout,
Cool.
no, Wipeout is fun to play.
Yeah. Awesome. So, just another question about drumming. So you ended up playing drums with Slady, and I wanted to touch on that. They're the the UK's only all-female Slade tribute act, I think is their tagline.
The world's only
The
all-female.
world's. There we go. There we go. Well, how did that come about? How did you end up playing drums for them?
So I was kind of not in any bands or anything, and this opportunity came up. I just saw, I think it was a Facebook advert or something like that. I contacted just to see what the deal was basically, and if I could commit and all that sort of stuff. And it kind of just kicked off from there. Me and Danny, the lead singer, we got on really well. Lots of things in common, and yeah, obviously invited down for kind of a jam or whatever, learn a few songs and all that. And it just kind of went from there really. And I was in that band, I think, for 3 years. It was obviously difficult over COVID. I think I joined them in 2019. Might have been, I think it was 2019. Yeah, and it was a lot of good fun. We played some great shows. They're really talented musicians, and it was for me, it was fun as well to play something that I normally would not have. Yeah. Because I can't say Slade is one of my favorite, but actually now they are one of my more favorite bands. But back then I was like, oh, I need to learn this song and this song. I knew more songs than I realised, but it's not something I grew up with. So it was it was a cool project to be a part of.
Awesome. Cool. And I mean, speaking of cool projects, so you were recently at the National Film and Television School. What were you doing there?
So they often do, in fact, every year they do courses where they basically have to film something a bit like Top of the Pops. So multiple cameras, they're filming a band, different angles. Obviously, there's someone else on the floor and there's someone else in like the producing chair telling them what cameras to cut to. Sorry. So I am part of a band. I create a band basically. Get us all together. We learn a couple of songs. Send that over, so they've got, obviously they can kind of script it a little bit, and whatever the course is, so the students might just be doing camera that day, or they might be in the producer's chair or doing audio, or all of it. So we're just there basically to be that band that they film, get all their different angles, and they learn from that, obviously because they've got tutors there as well that guide them. Yes, it's a great day. I love doing those days. This time round, there was also a second day, and it kind of integrated a talk show and a live band. So you think of like, trying to think of something now. So
any late night show, yeah,
basically. So they'd have to cut straight. They do the talk show bit, cut straight to the band. We play the first song, then go straight back, and then they talk a bit more, then come back, and we'd finish off the show. So it's actually, I've never done that before previously, because I've been doing it for, I think, 3 or so years now. And it was really interesting to see that point of it as well. And for me to be like on cue and not have red light fever. Obviously, it's pre-recorded. It's not like a live thing. So if you mess up, you mess up. And I'm pretty sure I made quite a few mistakes that day. But we're all human. So it's just a good experience. And the way they teach them and how welcoming and educational that facility is and all the tutors are, it's such a lovely environment and something really cool to be a part of.
Yeah. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain. I'm here in conversation with Sophie Reed, and this is Rob Full Stop with Older.
I promise you here one, stuck in the middle of your indecisions. So try and make the world see through your eyes. Your eye. It's not getting older, it's growing up that causes the problem. problems and your dreams, they die when you decide to run. Start getting older, growing up, that causes the problems and your dreams, they die when you decide to run. Trying to solve the problems you reprise. To your surprise, there is nothing wiser than to let go and start over. Not getting older, growing up, that causes the problems and your dreams, they die when you decide to run out of time. Years they come and go. We're childhood where we'll never know. Once your time is gone, it's gone. There's no turning back. It's not getting It's not getting older. The dreams they die when you decide to
That was Older by Rob Full Stop. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to be rejoined in conversation now by this week's guest, who is musician and stunt person, Sophie Reed.
Yeah, yeah. And it's all, I mean, it almost reminds me, like, it almost goes full circle back to how you first got your inspiration with the VMAs, because it's kind of, you know, it's a bit like you're now drumming at something similar to it, I suppose. So that's quite cool as well. But also, obviously, you know, you're active kind of in the entertainment industry in general. So you do a little bit of stunt work as well. What can you tell us about that?
What do you want to know?
Well, how did you get started, and what does it involve? Like, I'm like, I guess, like the average person, so I know that stunt men and stunt women are a thing. I have no idea exactly what it involves, and to be honest, probably the closest idea I have is that it's like a slightly more professional version of Jackass, I guess. You know, that's about what I've got.
Describe it.
Yeah.
I have always been into action films and just being active, you know, competitive sports since the age of like 7 or whatever. Got into martial arts in my early 20s. And I was like, how do those people do that? Like, how do they get into it? So I just started researching stuff over here. And then eventually I found a team in Banbury, ironically, literally up the road, because I thought it would be somewhere else in the UK, maybe London, maybe Manchester, or even like, you know, somewhere in Northern Ireland or something. I was happy to travel. It kind of kicked off from that. It's good if you have a basic skill level in some stuff, whether it's, you know, some sort of fighting, like martial art fighting, or I don't know, gymnastics or something like that. it really helps out. But where I train, you get taught everything to do the stunts. So you know, you're going from like your basic break falls and rolls, and how to obviously do them safely. Like anyone can fall, but it's not a drunken fall.
Yeah, everyone can fall, but you need to be able to get back up and do it again, you know.
Yes, and continually. So it's stuff like that, and then obviously we go to the upper scale where we're like setting each other alight, and we're doing like we're on fire. Obviously, it's all safely done. Lots of health and safety involved and all that sort of stuff, and like, you know, jumping off things at really high heights into an airbag. You've got to do it all properly. So that's a very basic overview of how I got into it and what kind of happens. Obviously, it's something of a skill that you need to drill continually. So I train 3 times a month at least, 3 times with that team usually. Obviously outside of any work or whatever. But then obviously I'm at the gym, I would say 4 to 6 times a week. I do yoga, I do walking football, I do other stuff to keep fit. So you've got to be ready to go. Obviously right now the strikes are happening, so not much is happening, unfortunately, but I'm going to be ready to go as soon as things kick back off again. And just trying to upskill my level and continually building my skills. As I said, so I've been doing lots of like armory courses, which have been good fun.
You did some archery, didn't you?
Yes. I've got a couple of friends actually in the stunt team, and also outside the stunt team that do archery, whether it's just for fun or they've done, you know, they trained to a really high level. I think one of them was in the GB team for quite a while. So just pick up hints and tips, and you just got to keep practicing. It's like an instrument. You just got to keep practicing, and obviously try not to pick up bad habits on the way. So get taught by people as well. It's just good fun. I'm just the kind of person that I'm like, I want to do that, so I go and do it. And with the stunt stuff, is that obviously there is a slight fear factor because it is high risk. It can be, but at the same time, you've got to learn to know your limits for a start. But also learn how to do things safely, because unfortunately there are people in the industry that don't know what they're doing. So it's you know, becoming making the industry better, and obviously better for yourself, and knowing how you can be safe on set when you're not with people you know.
Cool, awesome. So I'm just conscious of time as well. I wanted to chat to you about veganism because I know you're a fellow vegan. You're actually the vegan drumming ninja, aren't you? But how long have you been vegan, and what's behind your decision to be vegan?
I have been vegan 7 years, just over. 7 years. I think I was veggie for about 2 before that. What kicked it all off? I was campaigning against the Yulin Dog Meat Festival in China for quite a number of years before I was like, oh, I'm a hypocrite. I have a barbecue every summer. Quite a few of them, you know, where I'm eating burgers and whatever other stuff comes from animals, sausages and all that. And I was like, this doesn't line up. So it just clicked really. And as I said, I went veggie first, gradually just kind of, obviously you've got to change the lifestyle and you've got to get used to that. So I kind of did that very segmentally, very slowly initially. And then I was just like, why am I eating, you know, cow milk made from calves? It's not human milk. This doesn't make sense. You know, same for cheese and all that. I think cheese was the last thing to go. Then it just clicked. I was actually in, where was I? Australia when I decided to make that decision. So it was a little bit easier at that point because veganism hadn't quite kicked off fully over here yet. Obviously in Australia you've got a lot of their own produce that they make, so food is a little bit better than here. We import a lot of stuff. And it just went from that really. And you know, I just wish we had been educated about it earlier, and choices, because obviously everything's rammed down our throats and we're brainwashed, blah blah blah, all that sort of stuff. But obviously it's like tradition and things like that as well. I think obviously now the world's a bit more open and progressive, and it's okay to have those choices. And obviously now over here in the UK, we're like the #1 country in the entire world region in the entire world where veganism is a massive thing. You know, you and I could go to Wagamama, go and get a vegan meal. Boom.
That's it.
Love that.
Well, and I think as well, kind of, you mentioned how, you know, maybe certain choices and things are kind of forced down our throats, but I've certainly noticed even amongst, you know, non-vegans, people are now, they understand a lot better where their food actually comes from. So at least, you know, if they're making a decision to eat a burger or chicken nuggets or whatever, they actually understand what's behind that decision. You know, they're making that educated decision, and, you know, at least I think that there's something to be said for that. And also I think that's why more people are then choosing to be flexitarian or eating
100%.
vegan 3 times a week or whatever, because they know more. You know,
Yeah,
I think if
definitely.
everybody knew what we knew, then the world would be quite different.
I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. There's definitely a more conscious decision on what people are eating and why. And I think they're looking into a bit more of how it's all made and where it comes from properly. Because that was a big thing for me. So it's animals first, and obviously everything else aligns, like in terms of like health and environment, blah, blah, blah. But it's, yeah, for me, it's just absurd. Like, I just can't be a part of a system where I'm paying someone somewhere along the line to go and kill something just for, you know, 5 minutes of pleasure on my taste buds. Like,
for sure.
When I can have other stuff that was as nice but not sentient.
Yeah, cool. And you mentioned that you were in Australia at the time, and you've done a fair bit of traveling. Where are some of the places you've traveled, and what's some of the best vegan food that you've eaten while traveling?
Oh, that's a good question. I traveled fairly extensively. I'd say I'm going to be biased here because I'm going to pick my 2 favorite countries. I'm going to pick 3 actually. So one of my favorite countries is Portugal. Obviously Mediterranean, so you're going to get loads of fresh fruit and veg anyway. That itself is lovely, but they've started to kick off a lot more of their vegan stuff. Japan, a little bit behind. I went this year, a little bit behind on their veganism in terms of just getting it, you know, from shops or whatever. And it's hard to change a menu in a lot of places. It's just the way they are at the moment.
Yeah, quite traditional as well.
Yeah, like even if you've got an intolerance, they won't tend to change the menu, so it's a little bit difficult in some restaurants. But obviously you can get vegan ramen and stuff. Ramen's one of my favorite foods. I love it. It's just really wholesome and delicious. And then I used to live in Thailand, so Thailand is another place. They've actually got a what they call a Jay festival. So Jay actually means vegan. It's like a vegan vegetarian festival. They have it every year, I think in October. It's quite big in Phuket, other than Bangkok. They've got a good section as well. I think Chiang Mai, so like the main cities. But there is a big, obviously because it's Buddhist over there is a big J community, and it was quite easy for me at that point to go and get vegan food no matter where I went. My time was limited, it still is, but I managed to converse enough to portray that or point at pictures and stuff. But there was a lot of like vegan sort of vegetarian restaurants anyway. So Penang curry, tofu Penang curry. I'm delicious.
Hungry now.
Pad Thai, you know, you get a vegan Pad Thai. There's lots of different things out there. I could list loads. I miss Thai food so much, but so there's a few things for you.
Cool, awesome. And just the last question to end on is what have you got planned next, and where can people follow you to stay up to date with what you get up to?
Plan next. So obviously on a hiatus with all the strikes and stuff. Musically, not doing too much at the current point in time. I'm kind of just hunkering down at the moment, trying to focus more on the film stuff, film and TV stuff. So doing a lot more courses. But we think, I've heard rumours that productions will hopefully kick off in February next year. So I should be in a lot more things. I will be in Rings of Power, Lord of the Rings, as an orc, so you won't actually see my face. So I filmed that earlier this year. I want to believe that's coming out next year, because it had finished by the time the strikes had started. So that'll be the next thing. As I said, you can't really see my face though. But watch this space, really. As I said, hoping when things kick off, I'll have a lot of things that I'll be involved in. If you want to follow me, I am on Instagram, and you can follow me on my handle, which is vegan_drumming_ninja. You can see a lot of my posts and other shenanigans that I get up to.
Big thank you to Sophie for joining us. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain. And this is Jazz Dillon with Get On Your Boots featuring Henny Envy.
Place
That was Move On Up by Straight 8, and before that we had Get On Your Boots featuring Henny Envy by Jazz Dillon. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to head over to the Ilkshed now to catch up with Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review.
80 Aching Orphans, a 4-CD compilation of the music of The Residents. The Residents have remained anonymous since they started in the early 70s. The name came from the way the mail was addressed to them in their collective house. They appear in masks or with their heads covered in a big eyeball. If you ever play with the presets on a synthesizer, you will often find a sound where each individual note sounds out of tune even with itself. You may wonder who would use such a sound, and the answer would be The Residents. You may be fingering a simple chord on the guitar and you might try changing the fingering. You might try adding notes. And then you might strum something that evokes existential dread, and you might have found a chord used by The Residents. You might even find the chord they used on their particularly scary version of Satisfaction, a song you would not want to play in the dark. I had it on a transparent yellow vinyl, and it was not even a nice shade of yellow. It was very arty. If it had been a sculpture, it would have been one of those awful Chapman Brothers monstrous assemblies of doll body parts. When I first heard the South Park theme, I assumed it was The Residents. They did make a number of pleasant sounding songs, but you can be fairly sure the subject matter or the lyrics will be worrying. There is a song called Burn Baby Burn, sung by a guest female vocalist, who sings about her joy at being about to be burnt to death as a human sacrifice. It is one of a series of songs they did about Bible stories. They have produced a number of concept pieces that benefit from that mournful quality you might find in a Brecht-Weill opera or a Tom Waits musical theatre collaboration. Their most successful track is a dance number based on the Billie Jean bass line. They often take a well-known song and simplify the chord structure, reducing the number of chords to a bare minimum. And then they alter those chords using the kind of harmonies preferred by horror film composers. And then they distort the things that should not be distorted, like voice and bass. It finishes with a very touching, easy to listen to tribute to the members they lost. And they tell a story about meeting their hero, James Brown. It also speculates that they might have been more successful had they played the game and not behaved quite so much like delusional hippies. 80 Aching Orphans, a compilation of The Residents.
Big thank you to Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review. Thank you to Sophie Reed for being this week's guest. Thank you to everyone whose music I've shared. Thank you to Mervyn Cook for this week's poems and entry into the Rhylight Zone. As always, you can find us on Wickham Sound. We are repeated on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify and wherever else you get your podcasts. You can reach out to me here at the studio by dropping me an email on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. I'm particularly keen to hear from poets, performers, musicians, people with MP3s to share, local arts news. Don't hesitate to get in touch. You can also find us on Facebook if you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound. So I'm going to love you and leave you for this week. This is one last tune. This is Humans Can't Reboot with Nuclear Love. Catch you later.
Feel the shock wave of my heart. You can also tear my world and skies apart. Explosion of emotions. Your contamination will forever last. Your radioactive smog will always cloud over my path. method of delivery comes in different forms. I try to duck and cover as you swing your chemical claws. Increase the size of your arsenal and expand your yield.